There we go. And then, okay,
Science.
technical difficulties.
Yeah, thank you for bearing.
And can everyone hear me? Well, okay, good. I don't need a microphone then? No? Okay. So, hi, my name is Cassandra Michel. I'm with Natural Resources Canada. I'm a science policy advisor. I have officially been at NRCan for 1 year now. I'm happy to be there. So I'm working with Allian in the Standards and Operational Policy group with the Canada Centre for Mapping and Earth Observation. I'm going to start off our panel, our open session today on modernizing metadata. I'm going to talk about Canada's federal data policy landscape. Then we're going to have a presentation from Liliana about the implementation of the HNAP, the Harmonized North American Profile, ISO 19115, within the federal government. And then we'll have a presentation from Peter Parcel on where we're at online. And then we'll go into our panel discussion where we have Alan Jameson, Tobias Spears online, and Gordon Plunkett here from Esri. And we're going to talk about sort of the future and how we're going to modernize metadata. We're going to solve all the problems during this little session here, and we're coming away with it with some really good solutions. No, just kidding. But so to kick us off, I'm going to talk about Canada's federal data policy landscape, which is probably more exciting than metadata when we talk about policy. Just joking. But I'm going to try to make it really as interesting and as I possibly can. So that doesn't work to switch the screen. There we go. But before I kick off into the policy aspect of things, I just wanted to frame what are we actually talking about when we talk about metadata in this session. Obviously, we're at ISO TC 211, so we're talking about digital geospatial metadata. This is just a definition that I've taken from our Natural Resources Canada website that describes what digital geospatial metadata encompasses. So GIS files, geospatial databases, earth imagery. It can also include data catalogs, mapping applications, data models, related websites. So essentially, you know, it has location data and it needs a unique standard because of that. Now, looking at the federal data policy landscape, I'm going to hide this again. There we go. There are many federal data policies, obviously. There are many federal policies, many legislations. I tried to focus on which ones are most important for our conversation here today. So I've listed a few key government strategies, policies, and directives that can inform this discussion. But also I want to point you to the relevant legislation and directives therein that not only affect, they affect how we deliver data and what kind of data we need to deliver within Canada. So within Canada, we have two official languages. So we have the Official Languages Act, which means that all of our data needs to be in both French and English. So our metadata as well needs to be in both French and English. We have the Privacy Act. So we have to consider people's privacy and the privacy of our data when we're delivering it. We have Library and Archives Canada Act, and that relates to how we archive our information, the basic metadata that's required for information to be archived within the government, and the Accessibility Act, so ensuring that everyone can access that information regardless of what disabilities they may have. And so that really relates to digital technologies. We have guidance on digital technologies accessibility regulations, so ensuring that people with assistive readers can still access and use the information that they need. We have a 23-26 data strategy. So this is just a very a framework guiding how the federal public service manages, uses, stewards data to improve decision-making services and policies for Canadians. We also have this policy and directive on service and digital. Basically, we took a bunch of different policies related to IT, cybersecurity, data management. We put them all under one policy so that we can more effectively deliver our digital services and to clients. We have a directive on open government, which means that we operate in an open by default data world. So if it can be released, it will be released. And then we have these digital standards, which inform how we mean to create our digital services. So there's 10 digital standards within the Government of Canada: design with users, iterate and improve frequently, work in the open by default, use open standards and solutions, address security and privacy risks, build in accessibility from the start, empower staff to deliver better services, be good data stewards, design ethical services, and collaborate widely. And as I list those off, you can kind of hear a lot of repetition with the regulations and the legislation acts that we have here in Canada. Looking at the metadata component of it, so we have these GC-wide metadata standards. We have a standard for managing metadata. It is very high level. It essentially says that you need to plan and assess how you implement metadata. You need to adhere to GC-wide metadata standards, reference standards. You have to have a risk-based approach to quality control of your metadata, and you need to lifecycle manage metadata. That's pretty much the whole standard. You wouldn't need to go and read it. That is it. We have also an inventory of data and metadata reference standards. These are just very useful ones like date codes, things like that. But if that's like the point 2 of the standard for managing metadata, you would have to then use those standards within the Government of Canada. We have the standard on geospatial data. So that's like interoperability of geospatial data. And then we have this operational standard for digital archival records metadata, which relates to the Library Archives Canada. And that just states what specific metadata we need in order to preserve and trace records throughout the government. So that is pretty much the federal data policy landscape. Now, I'm just going to take a look here, look at the timeline. This is obviously not a comprehensive timeline. Policies go way back. Standard on metadata wasn't first initiated in 2010. That's kind of one of the more recent versions. Then we replaced it in 2024, just to note that that's fairly recent. Just to give you an idea of sort of when certain standards came into play, how new they are to the government versus how old they are to the government. So as you can see here, the standard on geospatial data came out in 2019 and was last updated in 2012. So it's 14 years old now. In 2012, I was actually here at Carleton doing my finishing my undergraduate using ArcGIS Desktop 10.1. That's how long ago that was. So a lot has changed. Now I'm here talking about metadata. And then we have the policy and directive on service and digital 2020. Well, that wasn't too long ago. It was last updated in 2025. So that's fairly current. Here, you can see that we're hoping to have a new standard on geospatial data by 2026, 2027. I'll talk about that a little bit more, but we're working towards updating that. So what does all this policy mean in relation to metadata? It means that the Government of Canada views information and data as a strategic asset, that we are concerned with lifecycle management of data, and that we are interested in the interoperability and efficiency of data and how we exchange data. So while metadata is not explicitly referenced in these policies, it is the supporting structure that ensures data discoverability, interoperability, organization, and reuse. And I don't really need to convince you of that because you're all metadata enthusiasts here and you know that already, but it directly supports FAIR principles. It makes sure that all our records can be traced, accessed, preserved, and used as strategic assets. It also tells us what requirements we need from our metadata, these policy documents. So we need our metadata to be machine readable. We need it to be in reusable formats. We need it to be released and accessible in both official languages. We need to meet accessibility requirements for digital technology. We need comprehensive documentation for all decisions made related to data stewardship. We need to embed it into our digital tools, repositories, and workflows. And we need to minimize manual data entry through automation without reducing the quality. So that's that risk-based approach to quality control that I was talking about. Getting into the standard on geospatial data to just kind of give you an idea of what it is right now. Like I mentioned, it's just about having interoperability of geospatial information across the Government of Canada to promote efficiency and accessibility of the information. So there's only, I'll say there's 3 requirements, but one of them is kind of the same. We have to adhere to ISO 19115 metadata and the North American profile of that. And we also have to adhere to ISO 19128 Web Map Server Interface. And then our CIO, our Chief Information Officer or equivalent, needs to ensure that departmental software systems handling geospatial data are compliant with that or can be modified to be compliant. That's pretty much the standard as it exists right now. What are we hoping to do when we update that standard? So we and NRCan are leading the efforts to update it. We want to identify approved geospatial standards. I'm sorry, I have to take a drink. I'm getting over a cold and I'm going to have a cough. There we go. So we need to, what I mean by approved is they have to be approved by either ISO or OJC or W3C or whatever standards organization or a national kind of committee to be approved for use and to create a foundational level of interoperability across the Government of Canada. We also wanted to reflect current modern interoperability requirements, not modern interoperability requirements from 2012. And we also want to just generally enhance awareness and adoption of geospatial standards across the government of Canada to better support FAIR principles. So I'll show you what those standards are on the next slide, but just to say we've identified some standards. We have an interdepartmental working group where we're getting feedback from other departments across the government of Canada to say, yes, these standards are good. No, we don't like those ones. And then we're hoping by next fiscal year, we'll have an updated policy in place. So this is all of the standards we're proposing to include on the new standard on geospatial data. A lot of them relate to encoding and exchange. There's a lot about web services and API because we know that some departments are probably only doing web services, others are transitioning to API, so we kind of want to have the flexibility to do both. I won't go into detail about all of these. That's a totally different presentation. But what I will highlight to you is that we are keeping the metadata the same. And now I've just convinced you that the government of Canada thinks that metadata is structurally important and we need to innovate and we need to advance our digital technology. So why are we not changing the metadata requirement? So why are we keeping it with the 2003 one? Because it is a large scale change across our government of Canada systems. It's baked into our processes. It took us a long time to just get to the North American harmonized profile, which Billiana will talk about, implemented correctly across the government of Canada. We need time to figure out what the right update to make is so that we can meet our current needs and our future needs, but we don't want to further delay important updates that we also need. So we're sort of taking a stepwise approach to how we're going to update geospatial standards within the government of Canada. We're going to go forward with what we've updated for other interoperability requirements while we take time to figure out what is the right solution for our metadata so that we can meet not just our current needs, but our future needs as technologies continue to emerge. And my colleague Ryan is working with the OGC on a testbed, looking at that as well. And that's part of why we're having this conversation here today in the panel discussion, so that we can talk about what do we really need to consider when we think about modernizing metadata to meet all the emerging needs and technologies that we have. I also just want to highlight that we've been working within NRCan on this collaborative geospatial strategy for Canada. So the link in the presentation, you can click on to read the full strategy if you would like to do that. We've worked on this in partnership with the Canadian Council on Geomatics. And there's a lot in there related to the priority outcomes and the strategic missions that relate to metadata, standardization, and data interoperability. So this is part of our vision as well to update this. It's not something that we're taking lightly. We are working towards it, not just through the government of Canada, but within NRCan ourselves. So with that, I will stop talking and turn the floor over to Billiana and Alian to talk about the implementation of HDAM.
Yeah, thank you very much. So